would thank you for joining us on Spotlight. I want to talk to you a little bit about how your education, your early life. Tell us a little bit about how Howard Mitchell grew up and where you went to school and that sort of thing.
Well, I'm a country boy. I was born in Mandeville. My father was a civil servant and basically a traveling officer for the Ministry of, what was then the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Agriculture. And so I moved with my family all around the country, ended up eventually in Kingston, and went as a country boy to a city school, St. George's College.
Okay.
A difficult adjustment for me, but we made it. Managed to scrape through high school and, and got into the University of the West Indies. I wanted to be a vet. My father wanted me to be a lawyer because vets don't make any money. So we compromised, and I had political ambition because a politician is really some sort of animal with a knowledge of law. But so that's basically it. It is not no special. It's a country boy's education and upbringing.
Yes.
And as I say, University of West Indies was a turning point for me because that is when possibly my academic skills became developed.
Okay.
Then thereafter went and did law, but not at the university. At the time, which was many years ago, we had a system of being articled to a law firm and taking the exams externally. I did that and then eventually went and did my master's in North America. That's
wow.
Educational story.
I'm interested to know, as a St. George's College boy, why do you think that, you mentioned scrape through, weren't you, you know, was it a difficult experience at St. George's College?
Let me elaborate on that. St. George's College, certainly at the time and now, has a very high academic standard.
Yes.
And it was a bit of an adjustment for me. The discipline of the Jesuits, I think it certainly has made me into a better person. But for a while it was an adjustment, and I did have some discipline problems. I still have some discipline problems. But fortunately the Jesuits had compassion, and they saw that there was, I think they saw that there was some material there they could work with. So after a while I settled down. Father Quinlan, who was the principal in particular, made a tremendous impact on my life and turned me around, I think, in terms of my discipline.
Political ambitions. You had your degree, your first degree in government.
Yes.
How serious was that political ambition initially?
Well, they say most young men are communists in their 20s and capitalists in their 40s. I had strong socialist views in the 70s. It was tempered eventually by the need to make a living. But I flirted with politics, and I've been a part of every major political party in Jamaica, and I still have a strong interest in our political structure and our political future. I am a little cynical about the system that we have, not a little, a lot cynical. So I have stepped back from any active support of any political party.
Okay, great. Now, you eventually got your law degree, and law, to switch from politics, government to law, why the switch?
It's not that big a deal. Really, law and politics are both instruments to manage society. So law drew me in from that point of view, that this was a way that you could change the lives of people, change how society operates. So I got into law from that point of view. Again, life takes its twists and turns. I developed an interest in tax and in mining law, and that is what eventually got me into, and in international trade law, that got me into working in the bauxite and alumina industry. So I moved away from litigation, moved away from law as an instrument of social adjustment, more into the commercial aspects of law. And practiced for 30 years before I retired.
Wow, yeah. Excellent. All right, let's just look at, after leaving school, after getting your degree and so on, where was the first stop for you as a grown man?
Well, depending on what you call a grown man. I worked at Grace Kennedy for a period of time as a sales clerk. And then when I got into law, worked at a firm called Milholland, Ashheim and Stone, which I don't think exists anymore. But after that, I went to Citibank as their in-house lawyer, and that really turned me on to tax and commercial law. From Citibank, I went and did my master's on my own in the United States and developed the interest in the area of mining law. Came back and went to work at Alpart, which again, that took my life down a different road, because I stayed in the area of mineral law, mining law, and I still have some consulting work in that area. When under the previous political administration, I was chairman of the Jamaica Bauxite Mining Company because of my interest and knowledge of mining activities.
Wow. So you first went to you went down the bauxite road as well.
Became a lawyer, spent some time in banking, and then settled down in the alumina mining, bauxite and alumina mining sector in Jamaica.
Of all those that you've been involved in, what would you say is now your greatest love? Do you reckon that?
Looking back?
Looking back, in retrospect.
I think I had the best time in the bauxite industry. It taught me a lot about commerce. It taught me a lot about the structure of our society in Jamaica, how the lives of people are affected by these major multinational activities. And generally speaking, the people that I interacted with I always came away from that having learned something. So that 10 or 12-year period was really perhaps the most interesting period of my life.
I want to go back to the 30 years that you used practicing law. Of that 3 decades of practicing law, were there any high points that you would love to mention?
I think the high point for me in my career was my representation in the Air Jamaica pension case, where, as a result of the activities of myself and my firm, we obtained about $1.8 billion of surplus pension funds for the employees at Air Jamaica. That, to me, that is what law is about, that you address some inequities and you right them and you correct them and straighten out those errors for the benefit of people. So that was probably the highest point of my career. We're
going to touch on a little some of the deeper points in terms of your involvement. Let's look at the bauxite industry, because this is a very topical issue right now. What's your view on the industry as it stands now?
Well, I think we lost our way with the industry, because the fact is that mining is an exploitative activity. You give up actual Jamaican soil to get a value. And I think we have wasted the bauxite levy. I think we have squandered the opportunity for training and for the development of ancillary industries in the mining industry. That is my personal bitterness, if you will, about the 60 years of mining we have had, is that at the end of the day, the people who have been trained in the bauxite industry, the people who have developed engineering skills, mechanical skills, many of them have migrated. We've lost those skills forever. The communities that have been affected by the mining industry have not benefited, certainly in my opinion, to the extent that they should have. And we have not developed a deepened manufacturing or engineering skill in the country. The industries that would normally serve the bauxite industry, the auxiliary industries, never really stayed. They're gone, they're dead. There's been no transfer of technology. So that to me is an opportunity lost, and an indication that successive governments have not set their policy guidelines in order to benefit the country.
Do you think that the bauxite industry can recover?
I think it can recover, but it will never be what it was. I think it can be managed. It certainly can be managed better. Over the last 30 years, we have gone from a Ministry of Mining standalone right, to a shared ministry, to eventually a bauxite desk. That's what it was. Now recently, in the last probably 2 administrations, there has been more of a refocusing because mining has become more technical. We have lost a great deal of our bauxite, obviously, but I think there are things like limestone, and there are areas within the bauxite and alumina industry, for instance, the recent exploitation of the redwood lakes, that we can still generate benefit, not just financial benefit, but technology transfer and education of our people from. That is what I would really like to see to focus on, and if we can do that, then yeah, the industry can recover to a certain extent.
What's your take on the takeover of some of the bauxite companies in Jamaica by UC Rousseau? Do you think it's benefiting Jamaica in any great?
No. Speaking personally, I think that it cannot benefit any country to have almost a monopoly interest in all of our industry, any one industry, by one multinational that does not have strong national linkages. I am opposed to any monopoly situation, and worse, a monopoly situation controlled by a multinational that really does not have any reason to have Jamaica's best interests at heart. So I'm not happy with it.
When you look at the displacement, my parents are from bauxite-oriented areas, so when you look at the displacement of workers and you look at the arid landscape now in some parts of rural Jamaica and all of that, have we lost more than what we have gained?
A part of me says that we could have done better keeping the bauxite in the ground, right? Having said that, there is no doubt that our road infrastructure, or the infrastructure of our towns and municipalities has benefited from the presence of the bauxite and mining and alumina mining companies. It comes back again to taking responsibility for ourselves. We did not manage it properly, and therefore, if you don't manage your life properly, other people will take advantage of you. And I think that is what has happened to us. So I can't just say, oh, we should not have mining. What I am saying is we must manage our environment and we must manage the mining activities in a more beneficial fashion than we have.
Well, we're going to look a little bit at also your involvement in the Jamaica Lottery Company. You were the chief operating officer there, and that tenure when the gaming industry was beginning to flourish in Jamaica would probably be an exciting time for you.
It was a very exciting
Tell us
time.
about that.
Very exciting time, and I met people and interacted with people who had a substantial impact on my life. The fact is that I got railroaded into the lottery industry, which is a controversial one, because of perhaps friendships. Howard Hamilton was and still is my friend, my close friend, and somebody who I personally respect and admire. His company was in deep trouble, and a number of us rallied around to try and save it. The company, when I took over as chairman, the company was at the time $114 million in debt and was about to fold. Howard, myself, Leighton McKnight, Paul Salter worked very hard to put that company back on its feet. And we did. We were fortunate. We were blessed. It was controversial. The churches, for a while, Howard couldn't attend church because he was not excommunicated, but he was ostracized. So he paid for it dearly. But we proved that the company could be run properly. We basically created the financial foundation that Chase and the Sports Development Foundation now stand on, and I don't think sports in Jamaica has been the same. It has benefited so much from those first activities of the Jamaica Lottery Company. So for the 10 years that I was there, it was a struggle. It was a challenge every day. It was exciting, but I think that in the balance, the effects of gaming in Jamaica, right, have been positive. There are negative aspects to gaming. Right? I'm opposed to children being involved in gaming. I strongly believe that people who have gambling weaknesses must not be allowed to gamble. I really don't see the big thing about selling gaming on a Sunday, because your worship is your worship. It's two separate things. And I can't support the view that you mustn't have any gaming activities on Wednesday, but that's my, not Sunday, but that's my personal opinion. But the lottery company was a success, right? And it has established the foundation for the successes that you see now in gaming.
Now, a few other things on your associations. Also, chairman of the National Housing Trust. This is something that I'm going to quiz you on, because the National Housing Trust is a big part of our landscape, right? When you look at your tenure at the National Housing Trust, how would you describe it?
Well, I enjoyed the time there. The National Housing Trust is one of those organizations that is fortunate because it was set up for a positive, beneficial purpose. So, you start from a foundation that of a moral good. It's good to start that way. I regret deeply that the National Housing Trust has, in the 37 years of its existence, not changed to meet the increased demands for housing and to deal with the housing shortages that we have in a more innovative fashion. In the four and a half years that I was there, I am not entirely satisfied that I was successful as successful as I should have been, but we did make some changes that allowed greater access to housing. I am one of those who believe that the National Housing Trust law should be changed so that the National Housing Trust Board reports to Parliament, and that the funds that are gained in the National Housing Trust can only be affected by a majority vote in Parliament after a public hearing. Right? And I think also that the Housing Trust has to look at, in the years to come, how it provides financing for housing and for whom. There is a national shortage of houses.
Oh yes.
Huge. And it's not fair that a percentage of people contribute their money for housing and they don't get it. They don't get the benefit. All of them don't get the benefit. And then you have people who don't contribute and get a benefit. Not fair, but at the same time, there's this huge need. People are squatting, people are living in unsafe conditions. I think we need a national position on the question of the housing needs of this country. Right?
Wow, a mouthful.
Yeah.
Now, looking at what happened recently, I want to touch you on that. The government dipping into the NHT fund to supplement the budget. Do you agree with that?
Well, the question, I don't agree, I don't agree. The fact is that if that money hadn't come from somewhere, you wouldn't be interviewing me today. I can guarantee you that. The social disorder that would take place. Having said that, there is a right way and a wrong way to do things. And I think the administration went about it the wrong way and had to correct themselves. Right? And had to go to the country to get permission to take it, which is the country's money. And that's what should have happened in the first place. I personally have some views about the IMF program and the NDX program, which I have expressed, and I will say them now that I think that the banks have profited the most from the Jamaican economy and the structure of the Jamaican economy, because they have been the principal lenders to governments, successive governments that have not stopped borrowing. The banks have profited from that because of the high interest rate regime, and I think the banks should have paid more, should have sacrificed more. Inevitably, it comes through to the taxpayer, it comes through to the savers in the banks, but it would be a more nationally equitable scheme than to go to the National Housing Trust and take money from contributors. Okay? Now, that is not a popular view But you will notice that notwithstanding the fact that the banks had to give up some profits, right, that they have still made profits for the first 2 quarters of this year of a fairly substantial nature. So I think that when you're under pressure, when you can't dictate to anybody, you suffer, and that is what has happened to us. We're a mendicant nation, and we cannot tell the people who lend us money what to do. That is, we are captive by the banks that lend us the money. Can't do anything about it.
What do you think, as somebody who has sat at the helm in terms of the board of the NHT, you mentioned quite clearly that there's a need for more housing in Jamaica. And obviously, the persons who really need it in most cases are not getting the benefits. Are there any thoughts in your mind as to how best to deal with this looming crisis that we find ourselves in?
I have said before, and I'll say it again, that if you recall, there was a program called Operation Pride.
Right.
Operation Pride was a good idea, badly implemented. The government, the state, has a great deal of lands which are suitable for housing, but those lands are tied up. What needs to happen is that those lands need to be freed up for housing. What we need to do with the National Housing Trust money, and also money from the budget when we can afford it, is to create the infrastructure on those lands that will allow poor people to go in and over time build their own houses, right? So that they would get a unit entitlement in the land, which they would have to pay for, but they would pay for it over time. And they would be allowed, and you would put in minimal infrastructure, marl road, 2-inch mains instead of 4-inch mains, basic sewage instead of first world sewage, which is insisted on by the approval authorities. It's not an original thought. Mm-hmm. When you go to South Africa, you see it. The electricity supply there is solar. Each house has a small solar panel which allows them to operate one light, a TV, or not one light outside, a TV, lights for the house, and they get a solar cooker for a stove. And yes, you're going to build a shanty and you're going to build a hut. But if you go to these squatter communities in Jamaica and see the development over time, they start from a shanty and pretty soon you have a concrete structure there. So all I'm saying is give people the opportunity to have a piece of land that they own, give them the opportunity to build a house. You're going to supervise it. You're going to make sure that they don't build houses that are structurally unsound, right? But give them that opportunity, because this is the Jamaican people have this spirit that will allow them to make use of it.
All right, we're going to go into Corrpak.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a company that you are
I'm
the majority shareholder in. Tell us about Corrpak for the viewers who might be wondering about Corrpak. What does Corrpak do?
Corrpak makes corrugated cardboard packaging. Now that's not particularly exciting or whatever, but corrugated cardboard packaging is the backbone of distribution, right? Mm-hmm. The food you eat, the soap you use, the oils, the water that is exported, they all are held and kept together in corrugated trays, boxes, packaging of one sort or the other. This company was established 7 years ago to meet a local demand, which was then being satisfied by imported products. We are happy to say that now we represent about 30% of the market or of the supply for corrugated packaging in Jamaica, and we are doing a little bit of export. We want to do a little bit more. It is a substantial investment, and it's manufacturing. We pay for electricity at the rate of 42 United States cents per kilowatt hour. Our competitors in Trinidad pay 5 cents. Our competitors in Damrep pay 9 cents. And under the new free trade agreement, they are going to be allowed duty-free entry into Jamaica. So it's hard to compete, certainly on price. What we try to do is to compete on quality and in delivery time, so that when you buy from abroad, you do not have to stock up on 2 months' supply. Right? It's a tough field. Manufacturing in Jamaica is a tough field. Not many people are interested. When I was coming out of university, there were many more industrial engineers, mechanical engineers than there are now. And it's hard to find people who are prepared to go into manufacturing.
How did the concept of starting a company of this nature came into being?
Well, my partner and I, my partner is Ray Chang, who lives in Canada, and Doreen Franklin, who was the president of the JMA at the time, several years ago, knew that we were interested in investing in something in Jamaica. We have other investments, and we're part of the Walker's Wood group of companies, which do spices and sauces, and a couple other companies. But she knew we had an interest in doing something for Jamaica and an import substitution, and she suggested a packaging company, and that was really how we got interested in it. It's a little bit of a crazy life, because manufacturing, as I say, is day to day. You never know what challenge is going to come on you. But so far, it has been satisfying in that the Jamaican people that work here are the best group of workers that I can name. There's no question about their productivity being, they can match anybody in productivity. Their spirit and their work ethic is tremendous. So again, this phase of my life has been enriched by the workers, the people that I interact with.
If I may, as a journalist, if I may think through what you're saying, one of the things that struck me whilst you sat there answering that question is that you have a golden opportunity coming up, because you're right in the logistic hub scenario. I mean, how do you envisage taking advantage of what is being proposed as a country with a logistics hub, and you are a packaging firm? Certainly it must excite you.
Well, if I live long enough to see the logistics hub, it would be a good opportunity. I hope that it comes off. We are sited close to the port, and certainly it would give us the opportunity, because this is our break bulk, and we have the capacity here in this factory and in this country to provide all the packaging it would need. So yeah, I'm excited about the possibility. I'm a little cynical about the eventuality.
Why?
Because I've lived here for all of my life, and it's a long time, and the governments come and governments go, and politicians speak and politicians don't act. So when I see it, I will believe it.
But as a business savvy person, you would be probably putting things in place to ensure that if and when it happens, you're there to take.
I certainly would, if it happens, and if I see it starting to happen, I would be prepared to throw my all into it. We are looking at expansion here. We have started an expansion here. We certainly have, as you will see, the industrial capacity in terms of the equipment and most of the skills to meet demand here. And I'd be willing, I'm committed. This is Jamaica, I'm committed to Jamaica. Right? So if we got something like that going here, it would be the best news that we could ever have.
I wanted to elaborate on the hub for me. In terms of the principle of the concept, right? Do you think it's a good principle? Do you think the concept is good? And how do you think Jamaica on a whole will benefit if it works?
I was a part of a group that brought potential investors to Jamaica, along with my partner Rachel, 8 years ago,
right,
to look at just this, a break bulk and logistics and economic zone in this area. The idea being that we would, because of Jamaica's geographical situation and its social demographics, the fact that we speak English, we have people who are literate, we are within 600 miles of North America and within 800 miles of Central and South America, which, by the way, should be our principal focus. We can bring goods from Asia in bulk and break that bulk, reassemble, reconsolidate, and ship into various markets. What you would do is have Jamaica be a convention or an exposition center. The buyers come from Latin America and from North America to see the goods that are being offered by Asia. We would have a conference center, we would have hotels, you would have a large exposition center, you would have assembly points, light assembly factories, training facilities for workers who are coming into the hub. It really would be a game changer for Jamaica. I'm pretty sure that there is still interest in the hub, but I think that we have to move quickly. A number of reasons why we have to move quickly. We're not the only people who have seen this. All of the east coast of North America are preparing their ports to take ships that are going to come through the widened Panama Canal. So is Puerto Rico. We will be lost if we in the supply chain if we do not move quickly to be the first to book these ships. Secondly, and what people don't realize is because of global warming, the Northwest Passage coming through Alaska is now for the first time in 2007, for the first time in recorded history, a water passage. The ships can come through there, and it's 4,000 miles shorter than to go through Panama, right? So it's not that Panama is going to be the only way to get to this side of the world. So we have to establish ourselves quickly, or else we lose the opportunity. And if we lose this opportunity, I can't think of what else will save Jamaica. Because agriculture and being able to export our wonderful agricultural products is not going to do it. We just don't have enough land space, we don't have enough products to save ourselves on agriculture alone. We can provide food security and we can cut down our import bill, but we cannot save Jamaica. This thing has to work.
Let's go back to your company. You started 7 years ago. When you started, how difficult was it for you to get the capital, one, and to organize yourself to this level?
It was a challenge to get the capital in place. Fortunately, I have nothing but high praise for Exim Bank and for DBJ. They have focused on what we do. They have not stinted, they have not failed us in responding to our capital needs. So, and Mr. Charles, who is there, is a champion. That has helped us. In addition to that, we were able to access capital through my partner, who is in Canada, and we did get some overseas capital because of his reputation and his image. In terms of the organization, I have had some experience in setting up companies and in putting systems in place. But that part was not hard. What was and continues to be a challenge is getting people who have manufacturing skills, because the manufacturing industry has dwindled over the years. People have moved out in favor of the service industry. So that to get people with mechanical engineering degrees, industrial, it's very hard, right? So we may be faced in the future with having to import people or re-import Jamaicans in order, if we're going to build a serious manufacturing base.
Wow. So how did you tackle that problem? Did you, how do you...
It's expensive to bring in people, to import people, because clearly they are accustomed to a different pay scale and sometimes treat Jamaica as a hazard post. What we have done is we made many mistakes. We have trained our own people. So we have a cadre here of people who understand this business. We still have needs, and it's funny. I am involved with various companies. If you put an ad out there in the newspaper for a financial controller or for an accounts clerk, the responses you get are much more than if you put an ad out there for an engineer. Because we just don't have those people. University, they train them in Trinidad and they don't come back here. They stay in Trinidad or they go to North America. We need to refocus and understand that if we don't broaden the base of our economy and shift it from just being tourism and remittances and a little agriculture to being an economy where we make something and add value here, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. Even more trouble than we are in now.
Wow. So you got to a stage where you passed over the hurdle of you know, the persons who you're employing and the difficulty in terms of getting mechanical persons. What was the response of corporate companies to Corrpak?
We've had a good response. They've exhibited a lot of patience with us because we had to go up the learning curve. I think I can say now that Corrpak's quality, the quality of our product, I don't think there is anybody who would deny that the quality of our product is not the best. Certainly the best in the Caribbean. We have proved ourselves against imports from Trinidad, imports from Jamaica, imports from Costa Rica. Where the challenge is and what we are struggling with is to get that price down, because at 42 cents US per kilowatt hour for energy, with the security constraints that we have, with the lack of qualified people available locally, we have to pay more, and that reflects itself in the cost of raw material. Added to that, the increased taxes on customs entry and the devaluation, plus the global increase in global paper prices. These are difficult times. The challenge is really price, and that's what I'm focusing on, certainly for the near future.
Is there any way that you envisage that you may be able to get the prices down to where you want it?
Yeah, first of all, manufacturing is about process flow and correcting your inefficiencies. So right now that's what we're focusing on. We're also trying to do some other things. For instance, with electricity, we are putting capacitors to keep down the peak load when the machines start up. We also have a challenge in that it's difficult for us to operate at night in this area, not because of security, because the people here have worked with us and are part of our enterprise, but because when you see the machines, you'll understand when we run at night, the noise that it makes, which is drowned out now by the traffic, is disturbing. So we have to do some insulation. It's going to cost some money. We're going to put that in. But once we can run at night, we're then on rate 50, which is approximately half of the cost. So those are some of the immediate objectives that we have to take in order to meet the price challenge.
I know you mentioned something about the light, 42 cents per kilowatt hour. Elaborate for me on the impact this has on your bottom line.
All right, let me give you the example. You see, global profit margins in the packaging industry. If you're making 8% on your investment, you're making a lot. It's more like 6 or 7%. So that electricity, energy, globally represents about 3 to 4% of your cost of goods. Here, it represents about 7 to 8%. So that 3% difference comes right through the process and hits your profit margin. If you're operating on a profit margin of 7% anyway, when you get that 3% hit, it really can hurt. So that is the immediate impact. And if you don't have your other efficiencies running properly, then it can mean that you're in a loss position. So what we try to do to compensate, as I said, is to upgrade our efficiencies, to save money and other things. I mean, this is not a fantastic office. We don't spend any money on our external looks and appearance. We spend money where it counts and where the production comes from. Those are some of the things that we have to do.
As I came into this office, I noticed that you were there's an expansion going on. I think you mentioned it earlier in the interview. Just talk us through why the need for that expansion, what you're thinking of doing in that direction, and so on and so forth.
Well, again, one of the ways that you try and iron out some of your costs is to try and maintain a healthy inventory of your raw material. We don't have the space. We have outgrown our space. We have about 46,000 square foot here undercover, but it's not enough to allow us to have inventory that would run through the ups and downs of the valuation and the scarcity of the dollar. So what we wanted to do was to both have greater space for raw material and also for finished goods, because if we can say to our customers, we will manufacture and keep your product for you, you draw from us. They save on warehouse space, they save on tying up their capital. When they're ready, they just come in with the purchase order and take the goods. So the idea is that we wanted some extra space. In addition to that, now they're always good to stand on one leg. There are other things we can do with cardboard and with paper. For instance, manufacturing paper bags, double-sided heavy-duty bags that we want to do, but we just don't have the space. So we were trying for years to buy some land from the Factories Corporation. In their wisdom, after 7 years and us paying down a deposit and signing an agreement, they decided that they weren't going to sell it to us anymore. So we've had to find a way to expand within our own boundaries. Now what you are seeing is the result of that, that we're mainly expanding up. Right? That we're going to be storing finished goods on a second floor. That will give us an additional 11,000 square feet. And there's some other things which I don't necessarily want to talk about now that we're going to do to expand. But it's tough because we keep about $50 million of inventory here, which translates to about 28 tons of paper.
Wow.
Not 28,000 tons of 2,800 tons of paper, and you need space to do that. And you can't keep it out in your home.
Wow. Right? Now, this business of making cardboard boxes and stuff like that puts you in a in direct competition with some other person, some of your competitors. How have you managed to ensure that you remain competitive, at least within Jamaica, and expand your clientele?
Well, short term, the market is a large market, right? And there's room for everybody. But having said that, what we have tried to focus on is reliability and quality. Right? That is what we really want to be known for. Medium to long term, what we are going to have to do is to get our prices down. And in addition to that, I'm trying very hard to develop an export capability, because there's no question.
Do you think there's a big market for that?
There's a big market for that.
Explain.
We have, without giving away all the marketing strategies, we see areas within Central America and the Caribbean Basin that are underserved. If you look at the Caribbean Basin as a geographic whole, we are at the top end and Trinidad is at the bottom end. DAMREP and Costa Rica have been focusing largely on this market because Jamaica is an open economy. It's the biggest population within the English-speaking Caribbean. And to go into other smaller islands, the logistics of it is difficult. However, they are ignoring some needs down in the Eastern Caribbean. So as I said, without giving away our marketing strategies, we are exporting to Ghana because Trinidad does not pay enough attention in our view to Ghana. And we have some Ghana is fast growing.
Yeah.
So we're trying to make some inroads here. So that is just one aspect of it. In addition, we believe that we should be focusing more on Latin America. Clearly the North American market is too sophisticated and too complex for us. But Latin America, many of those countries are at the same level of development, and we can get our goods in there. So that's our focus.
Let me ask you a novice question. Who buys the boxes, cardboard boxes?
Distributors mostly. The people who bring in rice, they will pack the rice in bags, but you have to get it to the supermarket in 1 pound bag in the box. Oil, bottlers of water. Basically, they're the manufacturers that are still here.
Are your consumers?
Yeah, as I said, we have 30% of the market here. We have about 400 customers. Of that 400 customers, about 40 are large firms. The people who bottle rum, right? Now I won't call any names, but we do make boxes for certain of the rum distributors. We make boxes for many of the soft drink distributors, the fruit juice distributors, water suppliers, those people.
Would you be able to give me a little synopsis of how you manufacture
Okay.
this product?
We import raw material, which is paper,
Right.
in large rolls. Those rolls weigh about a ton each. The rolls are then placed on a piece of equipment called a corrugator. They're placed 3 at a time. Each piece of cardboard has 3 components, 2 liners and a medium. The medium contains the flutes. The flutes give the cardboard, along with the weight of the paper, the strength for the box. So if you're going to keep chicken, for instance, and we make boxes for chicken suppliers, baby chick boxes, egg boxes, wet chicken boxes. So we using glue and steam, we compress that paper and make cardboard. And as again, it's a process you will see outside. That cardboard comes out in our case, in sheets. The machine that we have can produce 38,000 sheets of cardboard, 8 foot by 4 foot, every 8-hour shift. So we have capacity. When it comes off that machine, it's a sheet of cardboard. It is then taken to a die cutter. Your product, for instance, you have a box that you are selling honey, bottles of honey in, and you have your logo and your name. You come to us with a sample, we make up a die, right? And that we have to get it made abroad, but we're working on doing it here. And that die has the lettering and the paint colors that you want. So the board of the sheet of cardboard that comes off the corrugator then goes into a die cutter. That die cutter cuts the holes, the handles, the shape. When it comes out, it's flat. It then goes through another process where the folds of the box are made into the cardboard, and then finally a machine that glues it together and it's sent back to you. Right? It's a 4-step process. On the face of it, it's not a particularly complicated process, but efficiencies are critical. We can't waste too much paper because the margin is low. Paper is not a high margin thing. The energy, right? The cost of people to do a job over. So all of those things come into producing a finished product that you make a profit of.
Now, you since inception, 70 years, you've done very well in terms of your the name. It has gone places in terms of the accolades that Corrpak has gotten and so on and so forth. It's amazing that you've been able to be out there so quickly. What are some of the strategies that you do use as a business person to ensure that the name continues to grow and grow? Because obviously it's with the name that you use to actually sell these products.
Well, first of all, we've been very lucky, right? And I give thanks for that. Secondly, in terms of strategies that we use to get out there, one first strategy is to have a good product. Secondly, we have tried to reach the market that we want to reach. We've done some advertising, and I think that advertising has been fairly effective, and the media in Jamaica has been very, very positive to this company, and very, very positive to me. So we've been blessed in that respect. And we have entered all the trade shows and the trade competitions to get our name out there. So basically those are the marketing strategies that we've been using.
And I see where you were nominated for Observer Business Leader in 1997.
That was really related to the lottery company and the fact that we had turned around the lottery company from a loss leader into a profit center. Right? And I think it was not my effort alone, it was a joint nomination. Howard Hamilton was involved, and largely these things are team effort, not just one person doing it. So throughout my life I have been supported by people who have skills and who are motivated and who want to move in the same direction. That's what I believe in. I believe in teamwork.
Let's look at the future for Corrpak, because as you grow, you're going to be probably conquering new markets and you're going to be expanding into new areas. How do you envisage this company taking its place in the next 5-10 years? What would you want to see?
Well, a lot depends on how the government handles the economy, because the life cycle of a manufacturer in Jamaica in these conditions may be limited. However, having said that, where we see Corrpak position over the next 5 to 7 years is we want to be more in the export market than in the local market. Right? We think that we have the capacity to export a good Jamaican product, right, and to get it into substantial markets, and that's our focus. In addition to that, what we want to do is to diversify into some other product lines that are perhaps more not as ordinary as cardboard boxes, right? A minor example of it is that when you go to Latin America, you will see gift packaging made from cardboard, right? Very, very attractively done up, and that's one of the things that we are looking at because it's indigenous. We would have a particular Jamaican pattern to it, and we could export that. So that's the kind of diversification we're thinking of. There are some other uses. By the way, we recycle, or we contribute to recycling all our waste. So we ship all our waste out of the country for recycling to come back as paper. We'd love to see that happening in the country. So we would want eventually to be involved in an enterprise like that. Okay?
Wow. Now, in wrapping up our interview, I want to look at the whole question of how you balance your family life, you know. Mm-hmm. And this is one of the questions that businessmen and women tend to have a difficulty with, you know. Having this experience, and in terms of the nature of the business, it consumes a lot of your time. You're a family man. How difficult is it to balance
It's
family
a lot
life?
easier now. It's a lot easier now because my children have grown up.
Okay.
My wife has become tired of me. but in the early days, it was difficult. You make sacrifices. There were times with lottery company that I was working 16, 18 hours a day. I still have a regret. My younger child growing up, and she's now in her late 20s, but in her earlier 20s, said to me one day that she has this resentment that when she wanted help with her homework, I wasn't around, okay? And that you can't capture that, you can't get that back. So it has been a sacrifice for my family and my children and my wife, and I thank them for making that sacrifice. I would, if I had to do it again, I'd probably be spending more time with my family because you never capture that again, and that's more valuable than any of this kind of stuff. Not worth it.
What do you do in your spare time?
Nowadays, I fish a lot.
Yes?
Yeah, well, the waters around Jamaica don't have that many fish. I go fishing, put it that way, I don't go catching. And I'm trying my best to exercise. So I read, fish, exercise. When I was younger, I used to do a lot of night clubbing, but that's in the past. Nowadays, I'm an outdoors guy.
Take me along the road of agriculture a little bit, because you have been involved in the coffee industry board, and that is a big part of our export machinery. One of the problems we face is persons actually creating products and saying it's come from Jamaica and making big bucks of it. Coffee suffers from that big time. Tell me about the industry, the path that you think it's on, and whether we can continue to grow the industry.
I'm worried about coffee. I think we've made some substantial mistakes. I think if I were to point out the errors that we have made in coffee, it would probably show the way forward. But we shifted the emphasis on coffee from just coffee to Blue Mountain coffee. So now we are focusing, instead of, when I was growing up, my father was chairman of the coffee board in the 1970s. When in that period you had coffee, you had lowland coffee and Blue Mountain coffee. Mm-hmm. You had coffee in 9 of the parishes of Jamaica. Now you only really have coffee in 3. And they are the 3 most environmentally exposed parishes: St. Thomas, Portland, and St. Andrew. Right? That is our fault. We have gone and focused on this wonderful brand, this wonderful product, Blue Mountain Coffee, but we forget that Jamaica has a brand of its own. And what we should have been doing was maintaining coffee cultivation all over the island so that we could sell Jamaican coffee, right? Yes, there are threats to our brand and threats to the name of Jamaica. And there's not much you can do about that. Nike spends something like $40 million a year to try and control competition in China and still can't, right? But what you can do is produce more of your product so that the genuine thing gets out there and takes up the market space. So I strongly feel that the concentration on Blue Mountain coffee alone has worked against us rather than for us, and that what we should be doing is encouraging island-wide coffee cultivation. Now the problem you get into with that is that there's been a drift away from agriculture, and really and truly they will tell you it's only old people involved in agriculture, and those old agricultural practices can't cut it in today's world. So we have neglected agriculture, we have not improved the technology of agriculture, and we have not made agriculture attractive to younger people who have the capacity to learn and to go in and do new things. Those are the things that I would like to see us refocus on agriculture. It's going to be a long-term thing. 10 years from now, right, is when you will see the return. So that's what we have to do.
Are you worried about the Jamaican economy?
Extremely, extremely worried about the Jamaican economy. I think that we have made some good first steps. This particular administration has demonstrated some of the willingness to take the quote-unquote bitter medicine. But I don't think people realize how serious the situation is. And I give you my way of an example, and you may not want to eventually put this out there, but for instance, the other day, the day before yesterday or so, the Minister of Education announced that they would not be paying for study leave for teachers. And some of the excesses of that study leave, still studying for disciplines other than what they're teaching. The time off that was involved was tremendous. And now the teachers are saying they're going to rebel against it. We're not really serious. We don't realize that if we don't make these sacrifices now, we won't have a country to make a sacrifice over. And that's what I think. I think that more time has to be spent getting people to understand that we are in trouble. Our leadership has failed us, right? Because they have not set the example. And by leadership, I don't just mean political leadership. Private sector, public sector, church, civil society has failed us because we have not realized how serious the situation is. We have spent 51 years wasting our time.
Final question. The manufacturing sector is a sector that is beset by challenges. You have electricity challenges, you have a myriad of other challenges. When you look at the sector, what would be your recommendation to government as it relates to focusing on this sector so as to play its role in advancing Jamaica's economy?
My recommendation to government would be, first of all, to establish a better link between the minister and the ministry and the manufacturing sector. I think that the minister is challenged with a huge task, and I think that maybe what should happen is he should have someone who focuses only on the manufacturing sector, its development, its needs, its challenges, right? That's the first thing. Secondly, government has to make up its mind whether this is a service economy, right, or a productive economy, a manufacturing economy. If they do that, then they would realize that many of these taxes that they put on manufacturing, they put it on the raw material end, not on the finished goods end, which is where the it makes sense that you take tax where I make my profit. When you load me up with expenses at the back end, I don't have the incentive to produce. So there has to be a change in the philosophy of taxation. And there has to be, if we are serious that we want to be a manufacturing economy, then we have to pay more attention to the manufacturing needs, and the linkages between government and the private sector have to be stronger.
Howard Mitchell, thank you very, very much for joining us. Right. It has been an enthralling interview. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
And we wish you all the best at Corrpak.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.